I, Emma, 33F, don't think people understand what it really means to give up your 20s. Not until you're sitting alone in a lab at 3 a.m., fueled by vending machine coffee and the kind of hope that only comes from obsession. I was 23 when I joined Clark Med, my family's pharmaceutical company. Not as a favorite. Not with a ribbon-cut executive title. No, just as a researcher with a head full of dreams and a badge that said junior biochemist. The board members called me Mr. Clark's daughter in hushed tones. Not out of respect. Out of doubt. I could hear it in every comment. She's here to play scientist. Daddy gave her a desk. Cute project she's got there. What they didn't see was the fire in my veins. I wasn't playing at anything. I was obsessed with neurodegenerative diseases. My grandmother had them. I watched her in pain, crying, and everyone around would watch helplessly. And I knew I had to do something about it. So, I buried myself in the work. While other people dated, traveled, got drunk, and made memories, I was in the lab designing compounds. Hundreds of them. Thousands, maybe. Most of them failed. Some were disasters. But one showed promise. I still remember the moment it stabilized in testing. The moment the neurons stopped dying. The way I screamed into my lab coat like a madwoman. I didn't even tell my dad at first. I wanted to be sure. I wanted to be more than a girl with a bright idea, I wanted proof. 3 months later, we had animal trials. 2 years later, phase 1 human trials. And by the time I turned 30, I had designed a compound that slowed neurodisease by nearly 90% with virtually no side effects. I named it EV301. After me. Emma Victoria. The 301 was just lab nomenclature, but now I think it sounded poetic. Like a milestone. A room number. The place where it all began. And do you know what my father said when I showed him the results? He hugged me. He hugged me. I'm proud of you, sweetheart, he said. You're finally one of us. Finally? After 8 years, but I swallowed that bitterness. I told myself it didn't matter. That the work was the reward. That saving lives was bigger than my ego. And when they announced the next big move, going public, launching NeuroVive, revolutionizing the industry, I smiled. I gave them the formula. I gave them everything. Tea was raining the morning I found out. Cliché, I know, but true. I was at the cafe down the street from HQ, grabbing my usual before heading in. Almond latte, no foam. The barista already had it ready because I was predictable like that. I sat at the corner window seat. The one I always took, with a view of the street and the silver letters spelling Clark Med Tower across the building. I opened the business section of the news app, expecting another article about the NeuroVive rollout. Instead, I saw this: Clark legacy continues. Stephen Clark named sole CEO after father's full asset transfer. I read it twice. Then a third time. Then I laughed. It was absurd. Stephen? The same Stephen who once asked me if neurons were the same as neutrons? The guy who bailed on every school science fair and made up for it by flirting with my lab assistants, he was CEO? Of everything, I opened my email. Nothing. No internal memo. No notice. No meeting. No explanation. I texted my father. Me, did something happen at the board meeting I missed? Dad, call me. When I walked into his office 30 minutes later, I was soaked, breathless, and still holding on to hope that there'd been a mistake. He didn't even look up from his desk when he said, it was time to move things forward. What does that mean? I asked, my voice oddly calm. I've given the company to Stephen. Just like that. Like he was talking about lending him the car for the weekend. Not a billion-dollar enterprise. Not the company I'd spent my 20s building from the ground up. Not the very drug that had become the centerpiece of their future. You what? He's the next generation. You'll still have your place, Emma. You'll always be part of the family. I stared at him. But it was my research. Neurovive exists because of me. He finally looked up. You're a scientist, not a CEO. And Stefan is? I snapped. What exactly has he done besides carry your last name? He understands business. And I don't? He paused, and that pause said everything. He didn't see me as capable. Not in the boardroom. Not on the letterhead. Not really. You're the heart of the company, Emma, he said, like he was offering me a compliment. No, I said slowly. Coldly. I was its soul. And you just sold it for a last name. I left before I cried. When I got back to my apartment that night, drenched again from rain and fury, I pulled out the drawer where I kept all my patent filings. I found the one I needed, the one that mattered, and stared at the line in black ink, Inventor, Dr. Emma Victoria Clark Compound EV301, patent approved, the formula was mine. And they had just used it to crown my brother king. They had no idea what was coming. They used my mind. Now I'd use the law. The betrayal stung deeper the longer I sat with it. I wasn't sleeping. My days blurred together in a haze of legal documents, memories, and rage. The Clark Med building I once proudly walked into felt like a monument to my humiliation. The people in the lab still smiled at me, but it was the kind of smile you give someone at a funeral. Quiet. Cautious. Like I was already gone. What they didn't know was, I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I spent the next week reviewing every contract I'd ever signed. Every email I sent. Every research log. I needed to be absolutely certain that I owned what I thought I did. That my patent on EV301 wasn't tied to ClarkMed but to me, Emma Victoria Clark. And it was. The patent was in my name. I had filed it independently, years ago, before the formula became the company's crown jewel. Back when no one believed in it. Back when my father suggested I run it by the company's legal team first and I refused, trusting my gut for once instead of his voice. I even found the notarized letter I'd kept from the patent lawyer confirming the formula belonged solely to me unless formally signed over in writing. There was no such signature. They had taken my compound, my creation, and built an empire with it. A house of cards balancing on a stolen foundation. And I was ready to blow. I hired 2 lawyers, one for intellectual property and one for corporate litigation. The first time I met with them, I remember them exchanging glances after reviewing my documents. The younger one, Ava, smiled. Emma, she said, you've got them by the throat. The lawsuit I filed wasn't just about compensation. It wasn't even about pride, though God knows my pride was shattered. It was about justice. ClarkMed had used my patented formula without a licensing agreement, without acknowledgement, and with the clear intent to profit from it. And under federal law? That was a serious violation. I sued them for unauthorized use of intellectual property. I sued them for damages. I sued them for trying to erase me. The media got hold of the story faster than I expected. Headlines exploded, Family Feud goes legal, daughter of ClarkMed founder sues over patented drug, billion-dollar drug at center of Clark family courtroom drama, Emma Clark vs. ClarkMed, the lawsuit that could break a pharma giant. Suddenly, I wasn't a silent researcher anymore. I was the headline. The threat. The woman who had the guts to go to war with her own blood. And I wasn't hiding. My father called me 3 days after the lawsuit was filed. Emma, he said, his voice shaking, what the hell do you think you're doing? What you taught me, I said. Fighting for what's mine. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said coldly. You did that when you gave everything I built to someone who didn't earn it. Click. No more conversations. No more dinners. No more pretending we were a normal family. We were enemies now. While my brother was playing CEO in his new office, I was already building the next empire. I didn't want to just win the case, I wanted to replace them. I wanted to create something better, smarter, cleaner. A company that valued minds over bloodlines. So I started Evolve Biotech. I called it Evolve because that's what I was doing, evolving past the woman they underestimated. Past the daughter. Past the victim. I was done being someone they could silence with a title or push into the shadows with a boardroom vote. I liquidated everything I had, savings, stocks, even the apartment I once called home. Friends thought I was reckless. Lawyers thought I should wait until the lawsuit was over. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I was building. And the beautiful part? I didn't need to start from scratch. The same scientists Clark Med had ignored for years? They came with me. The quiet women and men in the labs who weren't part of the family name but bled innovation into the work every day, they jumped ship without hesitation. I want to work somewhere my brain matters more than my last name. One of them told me. I offered them equity, freedom, and a seat at the table. The kind of respect I had fought for and never received. Together, we created a new version of EV301. A cleaner derivative. A more sustainable manufacturing model. And we didn't stop there. Within 6 months, we had a full pipeline of neurodegenerative research in development. Parkinson's, ALS, early onset dementia. I didn't just want to treat the symptoms, I wanted to change the trajectory of these diseases entirely. Meanwhile, Clark Med was crumbling under pressure. The media circus from the lawsuit exposed everything. Investors panicked. The stock price tanked. My brother, who had no scientific background, was forced to do interviews he couldn't answer. And once the court ordered a freeze on all profits related to EV301 until the case was resolved, the company started hemorrhaging money. He called me once. Emma, let's talk. We don't have to do this. You should have thought of that before you put your name on something you didn't earn. Dad's sick over this. Then he should have stayed out of my lab. Click. Again. No more brother. No more masks. Clark Med tried to launch a new campaign, said they had a new compound. But the clinical trials flopped. Investors pulled out. Employees leaked documents. The house of Clark was burning down, and the whole world could smell the smoke. By the time the lawsuit neared resolution, the judge looked at my patent, the timelines, and the evidence of unauthorized use. The verdict, in my favor. All rights to the compound returned to me. Damages owed? In the hundreds of millions. A public statement of wrongdoing. And Clark Med was banned from using or marketing the drug in any capacity without my written consent. They thought they were cutting me out. Instead, they handed me the keys to everything. I walked out of that courtroom not as a daughter, but as a queen. Victory should have felt like freedom. But instead, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. The court ruling had just gone public when the messages started pouring in, some supportive, many not. Old family friends, distant cousins, former classmates. Everyone had an opinion. Some called me brave. Others called me ruthless. But the loudest voices, my family, you humiliated your father, Aunt Lynn wrote in a text. How could you take your own blood to court? Said a voicemail from my uncle. You've destroyed what your father built, came the email from my cousin Adam. Do you even care what this will do to his health? And then, finally, the most manipulative of them all, my mother. She hadn't called me in months, hadn't said a word during the trial. But after the ruling, she showed up at my door like a ghost from a past life. Her eyes were watery. Her makeup was perfectly smudged for dramatic effect. She walked in like she still had the right. Emma, she whispered, her voice trembling. What you did. It's killing your father. I didn't flinch. What he did almost killed me. She looked around my apartment, as if searching for something to insult. When she found nothing, she sighed dramatically and sat down. I know you're hurt, she said. But your father only wanted to set your brother up. He's a man. He needs stability. You're strong. Independent. You don't need help. I stared at her. That was it, wasn't it? The root of their logic. They saw me as strong, so they gave me nothing. They saw my brother as weak, so they handed him everything. Except that wasn't strength. That was survival. You didn't raise me to be strong, I said quietly. You just never showed up. I had no choice. My mother didn't respond. Her silence said everything. They had counted on my silence. My endurance. My habit of keeping the peace, even when I was bleeding from the inside out. But that woman was gone. And when my mother left, refusing even a hug, I closed the door and felt nothing. No guilt. No regret. Just peace. The media moved on to newer scandals. Clark Med officially filed for bankruptcy 6 months after the court ruling. My brother moved to Florida and started a lifestyle coaching podcast, which felt like a punchline to a bad joke. My father stepped down from every board he ever sat on and quietly disappeared from public life. But me, I was just getting started. Evolve Biotech hit its first $100 million in funding within a year. Our research gained FDA fast-track status. Scientists from around the world wanted to collaborate. I was on magazine covers, speaking panels, and podcasts not because I had the Clark name, but because I had built something real. And for the first time in my life, I felt like Emma. Not the daughter. Not the helper. Not the cold woman who chose science over family dinners. Just me. I started mentoring young women in STEM. I created scholarships for girls who were told they weren't built for science. I visited universities, shared my story, and made sure they knew that being underestimated could be the greatest weapon, if you know how to turn it into power. I even ran into a former Clark Med board member at a conference in Geneva. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. We were wrong about you, he said. I smiled. No. You were afraid of me. Because that's the truth, isn't it? They weren't blind. They knew my worth. They just hoped I'd never wake up and see it for myself. But I did. And when I looked in the mirror now, I saw a woman who didn't flinch when people tried to guilt her. A woman who knew her boundaries. A woman who took back her life and built something no one could take from her. My name was no longer just Emma Clark. It was a statement. A legacy. And every time I stepped into my office, bright walls, glass windows, and my name etched in gold on the door, I remembered the girl they overlooked. The one who worked late nights for her father's dream, only to realize it was never meant to include her. And I whispered to her, "You were always the plan." They just couldn't see it. Success has a funny way of resurrecting the dead. Not the literal kind, but the people who disappeared when you needed them most, the ones who left you on read, dismissed your potential, or sided with convenience over loyalty. Now they were back. It started with a text from Rachel, my college roommate. We hadn't spoken in 7 years. The last time we did, she told me I was wasting my youth in labs while everyone else was living. Now, Emma. Wow. I just saw your feature in Women in Pharma. So proud of you. Let's catch up sometime, babe. I didn't respond. Then came Matthew, my ex. The one who called my workaholic tendencies unattractive and broke up with me over brunch, saying he needed a woman who put the relationship first. Now he was divorced, jobless, and suddenly following all my social media posts. Can't believe I let a legend like you go. Maybe coffee sometime? I'd love to talk. Just talk. No, thanks. But the one that really hit me? My father's assistant, Lisa. The same woman who once stood by while I was pushed out of every meeting. Every decision. She sent me an email with a subject line that made me laugh out loud: application for position at Evolve, hope you remember me. Oh, I remembered. She said she'd love to contribute her experience and learn from a visionary like me. Funny how quickly people forget the way they looked down on you when you were beneath them. Now, they tilted their heads up with admiration, but only because they had no choice. I didn't reply to most of them. I didn't need to. Silence, I learned, is the most powerful language for people who once ignored your voice. But I wasn't bitter. I was aware. Aware of the sudden warmth in voices that once turned cold. The hollow compliments. The desperate attempts to rewrite history. And maybe the old me would have tried to reconnect, forgive, make room. But the new me, I made peace with the past. I just didn't invite it in anymore. I didn't expect my father to show up at my office. He looked older. Not just physically, there was something in his posture. A man used to towering now slightly stooped. The aura of power that once filled rooms? Gone. He asked for 5 minutes. My assistant hesitated, but I said yes. Let him see the empire I built alone. He stepped inside, took in the clean lines, the awards, the photos on the wall, photos of women scientists, of young girls in lab coats, of my first product launch. Not a single trace of the Clark name. Just me. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to hear it all. I thought I was doing the right thing. Preparing your brother to lead. I thought you didn't want that. You never asked what I wanted, I replied. He swallowed. You're right. Silence. Then he did something I didn't expect. He took out a small envelope. Inside it was a letter, handwritten, and a photo. A photo of me at 17, in a lab coat, holding up a high school science trophy. The same photo I'd sent him once. He never responded. I kept it, he said. I just didn't know how to support a daughter I didn't understand. I stared at the picture. The girl in it was proud. Hopeful. Still naive enough to believe that love and recognition went hand in hand. I'm not that girl anymore, I said. I can see that, he nodded, his voice a little cracked. You've built something remarkable, Emma. I'm proud of you. Even if I never said it. He didn't ask for anything. No shares, no positions, no handouts. Just a moment. I didn't forgive him, not yet. But I also didn't shut the door. He left quietly. That evening, I opened the photo again. I framed it. Not for him. For me. To remind myself of the journey. Of what it cost. Of what I survived. As for my brother? He posted a video online claiming he let the company go to focus on personal healing. People ate it up. He's always been good at theatrics. I didn't care. I had work to do. Lives to save. Young minds to inspire. Let the past knock on my door. I was too busy living the future.